There's a type of person who sees everything, every micro-expression, every shift in tone, every unspoken tension in a room. And you'd think that would be a superpower. But here's what nobody tells you. Being too self-aware is slowly destroying your life. And the psychology behind why is darker than you think. Most people walk through life on autopilot. They say things without analyzing them. They make decisions without questioning every possible outcome. They exist without constantly monitoring how they exist. But if you're watching this video, you're probably not most people. You notice when someone's smile doesn't reach their eyes. You catch the half-second pause before someone answers a question, and you already know what that pause means. You walk into a room and within seconds, you've already mapped out the social dynamics, the power structures, the unspoken alliances. And while everyone else is just living their life, you're standing 3 feet behind your own body, watching yourself live yours. Psychologists call this excessive self-monitoring. And research from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology shows that people who score high on self-awareness scales are significantly more likely to experience chronic anxiety, social exhaustion, and what researchers call the observer's paradox. The more you watch yourself, the less natural you become. It's like trying to fall asleep while thinking about falling asleep. The act of observing destroys the thing you're trying to do. Here's where it gets dark. Most people have an internal mirror that turns on occasionally. Maybe during a job interview, or a first date, or when they say something embarrassing. But for the hyper-self-aware person, that mirror never turns off. It's running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You replay conversations from 3 years ago. You analyze the exact word you used in a text message and wonder if the other person interpreted it differently than you meant. You rehearse what you're going to say before you say it, and then you analyze how you said it after you said it. This is what psychologist Tasha Eurich calls the difference between internal self-awareness and productive self-awareness. Internal self-awareness, when it becomes obsessive, doesn't lead to growth. It leads to paralysis. And here's the truly unsettling part. Studies from Harvard Business Review found that people who spend the most time in self-reflection are actually less self-aware than people who spend less time doing it. Why? Because they get trapped in a loop. They're not reflecting to learn. They're reflecting to control. And control is an illusion. There's a social cost to being too self-aware that nobody talks about. When you can read people like open books, something strange happens. You start feeling responsible for their emotions. You walk into a conversation, and you're not just managing your own feelings. You're tracking theirs too. You're adjusting your tone, your body language, your word choice in real time, based on signals that most people don't even notice. This is called hyper-empathic monitoring, and it is draining on a level that's hard to explain to someone who doesn't experience it. You know that feeling after a long social event, where you're not just tired, you're hollow? Like someone reached inside your chest and removed something? That's not introversion. That's the cognitive cost of running a constant social simulation in your head. And it creates a painful paradox. The more you understand people, the lonelier you become. Because real connection requires vulnerability. It requires letting go of control. And the hyper-self-aware mind cannot let go of control. Because control is the only thing keeping the anxiety at bay. Dr. Dan Siegel, a clinical professor of psychiatry at UCLA, describes this as the prison of perception. You can see the cage, you can describe every bar in perfect detail, but seeing it doesn't set you free. In fact, Seeing it is the cage. Now here's the part that most self-aware people don't want to admit. When you can read a room instantly, when you know exactly what someone needs to hear, when you can predict how people will react before they react, you have an enormous amount of social power. And whether you realize it or not, you are using it. Every time you adjust your personality to match whoever you're talking to, every time you say the thing you know will land instead of the thing you actually feel, every time you become the version of yourself that the situation requires, you are, on some level, manipulating the interaction. And the darkest part? You can't tell the difference anymore between who you really are and who you're performing as. Psychologists call this identity diffusion. It's when your sense of self becomes so flexible, so adaptive, that it essentially dissolves. You're not one person. You're a collection of carefully constructed responses designed to navigate social situations with maximum efficiency. The existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre called this bad faith, living as the person others expect you to be instead of the person you actually are. And for the hyper-self-aware individual, this isn't a choice. It's a survival mechanism that started so early in life that you don't even remember making it. This level of self-awareness doesn't come from nowhere. Research in developmental psychology shows that hyper-self-awareness almost always traces back to childhood, specifically to an environment where the child needed to monitor adult emotions to stay safe. Maybe you had a parent whose mood was unpredictable. Maybe you learned that reading the room was the difference between a calm evening and a storm. Psychologist Pete Walker calls this fawning, the fourth trauma response after fight, flight, and freeze. It's when a child learns to survive by becoming excessively attuned to other people's emotional states. Not because they want to, but because they have to. And that skill, the ability to read a room, to predict emotional shifts, to become whoever the situation requires, doesn't disappear when you grow up. It just changes targets. Instead of monitoring a parent, you monitor everyone. Instead of surviving a household, you're surviving every social interaction you enter. So what do you do with all of this? The answer isn't to become less aware. You can't unsee what you've already seen. But you can change your relationship with what you see. The first step is radical. Stop asking yourself why. Tasha Eurich's research found that people who ask why do I feel this way actually spiral deeper into rumination. Instead, ask what? What am I feeling right now? What is one thing I can do about it? What matters to me in this moment? What questions lead to action? Why questions lead to loops? The second step is even harder. Let people misunderstand you. The hyper-self-aware mind is terrified of being misread. But the truth is, being misunderstood is the price of being authentic. You cannot control how people perceive you and be yourself at the same time. And the third step is the most important. Recognize that your awareness is not a flaw. It became a burden because it was forged in survival. But it can also become a gift if you stop using it to monitor and start using it to connect. The dark psychology of being too self-aware isn't that you see too much. It's that you were taught to watch instead of live. And the way out isn't to close your eyes. It's to finally stop performing and let yourself be seen. If this video resonated with you, you're probably the kind of person who thinks about these things at 2 a.m. Subscribe to Wired Different, because we're just getting started. And I promise you, you're not as alone in this as you think.